ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
The first teaching that Krishna shares in Bhagavad Gita touches upon one of the main philosophical and spiritual questions that humans have asked throughout history, and that is, who am I? Krishna takes focused time to clearly explain the existence of a soul as the core essence of our beings. This is called Jiv Tattva, the truth of the soul. Jiv or Jiva means soul, and Tattva means an eternal, universal truth. So Jiv Tattva, the truth of the soul. Another Sanskrit word for the soul that Krishna uses is Atma. So he uses Jiva and Atma interchangeable, and sometimes he uses also a compound version, Jiv Atma. And Srila Prabhupada has translated this many times into spirit soul. The lesson is simple. We are not these bodies, we are the soul that resides within the body. As the body is temporary, the soul is eternal. As the body must be destroyed and decay, the soul is indestructible. Srila Prabhupada often used the car analogy. Here the car represents the body, and the person driving the car represents the soul. We need a living person to drive the machine. Okay, now with AI, perhaps this analogy is not as relevant anymore because a car can drive itself, but as we know, there had to be a moment where a living being, a human being, programmed the computer that actually empowers the car to drive itself. It's still pretty clear. The body is a machine and the soul is the living entity that drives this machine. This analogy is actually taken from an older version that is to be found in the Katha Upanishad, the Svetasvatara Upanishad, the Manvadharma Shastra, where instead of a car that symbolizes the body, a chariot symbolizes the body, and the person sitting on the chariot symbolizes the soul. And in this analogy, they also have 5 or 6 horses, and the person on the chariot has reins by which they control the horses. So here the horses represents the 5 senses and the mind, and the rein either represents the intelligence or the mind. The living being has to control his senses by his intelligence and his mind. So this older analogy is a little bit more detailed, and we will talk about it more when we go into the section of yoga, because a big part of yoga is how we can control our senses. But for now on, this simplified version is good enough. There's a car and a driver. Theoretically, this lesson is very simple and easy to understand, but to really realize one's being or one's identity as a soul is not so easy. It's not a cheap thing to realize oneself as a soul. It requires a long time of spiritual practice and contemplation. And what is the proof that somebody has realized oneself as a soul? The proof is that one acts on the level of the soul, that one acts in the interest of the soul. Because if we don't know who we are, we also don't know what activities is in our best interests. And this is why Krishna first shares the knowledge about the soul, the Jiva Tattva, and then the second lesson he gives to Arjuna, or all of us, is that of what the right type of action is. We are going to read a chunk of verses from chapter 2 where Krishna explains about the soul. But first, let us orientate ourselves where we are in the Bhagavad Gita from five main topics, which are Ishvara, God, it's Prakriti, the material nature, it's Jiva, the soul, it's Karma, activities, and it's Kala, it's time. Obviously, we are on the topic of the soul, Jiv Tattva. From three main sections of the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Kand, the section that explains about Karma Yoga, about activities, Bhakti Kand, the section that explains about Bhakti Yoga, yoga in devotion to the Supreme God, and the section which is called Gyan Kand. Gyan means knowledge, so that is the section about the yoga of knowledge. We are in the Karma Kand, where Krishna explained the yoga of activities. But to make that point clear again, before he goes into any activities, he explains about Jiv Tattva, about the soul, so we can understand our own identity and our own self-interests. We're going to read from chapter 2. Chapter 1, the scene was set. The battlefield is there, Arjuna and Krishna are there, and Arjuna sees all the warriors, and he realizes that he has to fight with his own family members and some of his teachers, his elders. And he has a complete emotional breakdown. And he gets confused about his duty as a warrior and about his duty as a family member. And he turns to Krishna and says, Krishna, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. Please instruct me. And this is when Krishna starts to talk. Actually, first he smiles because he's God. He knows everything will be all right. He knows it's a problem of consciousness that Arjuna has, nothing else. So first he smiles and then he starts to explain about Jiv Tattva. But I repeat this again because it's very instructive. Krishna does not start to talk until Arjuna is ready to listen, until Arjuna is humble to receive spiritual knowledge. And this is something we have to understand also. Unless we are humble and realize we cannot solve all our problems by our own effort, we need guidance from a higher authority, then it's like we open up, the vessel opens up and we can receive spiritual knowledge. And the way I've structured this full lesson is we're going to read now from chapter 2, 2:12 to 2:30, I think, the chunk of verses where Krishna explains about Jiv Tattva. And I'm going to put the text here so you can read it and listen to it at the same time. And next to the text, I will put the soul fact, because I've taken out the different soul facts that Krishna shares in these in this chunk of verses. And after, we're going to go into each of these soul facts and discuss in depth. And then I will add also other verses from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks about the soul. And at the end of the full episode, I will share all the verses and all the passages in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna shares the knowledge about the soul. So you can go back and read for yourselves. I got the feedback from the introduction that I put up on YouTube not long ago, that it's very condensed knowledge that I'm sharing. And this is right. What I'm sharing in 1 to 1.5 hours is a few weeks of studies and a whole lifetime of realization. So take your time with it. I would suggest that you take a pen and a paper and you take notes and listen to one part at a time and go back and read directly from Bhagavad Gita. And if we really want to realize this, we have to study it together with spiritual practice such as prayer and meditation. Without further ado, let's read the verses from Bhagavad Gita that talks about the soul. Chapter 2, we're starting from text 12. Krishna is speaking. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. As the embodied soul continuously passes In this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Shayan of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge, for the self slays not, nor is slain. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? As a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, not withered by the wind. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. If, however, you think that the soul, or the symptoms of life, will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. All created beings are unmanifest in the beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not to grieve for any living being.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare